Our next witness is witness 15. You find his statement at page 322. The witness is giving evidence in his personal name, Mr. Jamshid Ariyana. He's giving evidence on behalf of his second cousin.
What do you mean on behalf
his
of?
second cousin was killed on.
Okay.
He was Mr. Ariyana, the chairman would swear you in.
Mr. Witness, thank you for agreeing to testify. Please would you repeat after me? I solemnly declare that I will speak the truth.
I solemnly declare to say the truth.
Truth and nothing but the truth.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Questions from counsel, followed by questions from the panel.
Mr. Ariyana, your second cousin is Borhan Mansurnia.
نسبت فامیلی من با برهان
Our family relationship is that my father and Borhan's father are cousins, but we have very close relationship. Our relationship was above just second cousin.
Borhan was shot on 16th November 2019.
Yes.
According to your witness statement, the bullet was shot from behind, cut through his internals and came out from the front. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you tell the tribunal what your family did in connection with this event?
دقیق اون روزی
Borhan in Dolatabad, Kermanshah, where there were protests, he left his brother's house. He wanted to go and visit one of his friends who was in the barber's shop. Apparently, at the time the barber's shop was closed. He also saw the protests, and he saw the people, that they were moving towards the police department. So he got trapped between the people and the police department. He wanted to go back, and then the police department started shooting, and Borhan and two other people were shot. The other two died in place. Borhan got injured, fell down, and he was taken by the locals to the yard of a house. And by the use of his mobile phone, they contacted his brother living in Kermanshah. His brother went to the place of the incidents, and they tried to take him to the hospital as soon as possible. He was taken to Farabi Hospital. Unfortunately, Farabi Hospital did not admit him. Why? It's not clear to us. After about an hour waiting, the ambulance took him to Taleghani Hospital. Taleghani Hospital at the outset did not admit him. He was left behind the doors of the hospital for a long time. He lost a lot of blood. Finally, because of the insistence of his family, they admitted him. After 2 hours, maybe, after he was losing a lot of blood, he was taken to the operation room, and an operation was carried out on him. Unfortunately, at that time, in the meantime, when Borhan was in the operation room, according to the witnesses, a large number of dead bodies left the operation room, maybe about 8. So the families of Borhan who were there, they were all worried that maybe one of the bodies, one of the corpses might have been Borhan. Fortunately, at the time, Borhan did not die, and he left the operation room alive. Unfortunately, instead of taking him to the ICU, he was taken to the hall, and he was left with the ordinary patients, even though his family stressed that he is in a dire situation and he needs to be at the ICU, but Dr. Mohammad Mehdi Shakiri, who was his doctor, opposed taking him to the ICU. At the last moment, when the situation became really critical, he was sent to the ICU, but that was too late. His body was turning cold, and unfortunately, he lost his life.
The loss of your cousin, Ms. Borhan. You have complained, your family had complained against the police and the hospital, as well as the physician who had done the operation. Have you received any result of that complaint?
Unfortunately not. Complaints were written to several places. Not only they did not get any answer, they were even asked not to pursue the issue. The coroner's office even did not give the medical report to their family, the death report to the family. They even claimed that the bullet that had hit Borhan was not organizational. That is to say, the security, it doesn't belong to the security forces. They claim that Borhan was not killed by security forces, and they claim that the thugs killed him. While no bullet was in Borhan's body, so that they could say who had shot it. We don't have, does anything called organizational bullet exist? I believe that they say contradictory things. On the one hand, they say that we have not killed him, and on the other hand, they don't want to deal with the complaint. Even in the place where Borhan was born, in Marivan, the police and the Friday Prayer Leaders Office, the commanders of the RGC, went to his house, and they were trying to convince Borhan's father to accept Borhan, to convince the parents so that they would introduce Borhan as a martyr. They even went with a camera there to film them and say that he was killed by thugs and he's a martyr, but they were not ready to testify before the camera. At the same, on the one hand, we see that the authorities are not ready to respond to the complaint. They say don't pursue the complaint, and on the other hand, they say that their forces have not killed Borhan, and the family don't know what to do. They don't know who they should complain to. We don't know whether there is any competent authority to deal with their case. We don't have any separation of power in Iran. to say that we've got a judiciary, executive, legislative, independent bodies. They are all under control of one body, and they justify the crimes of each other. So in the dictatorial system of Iran, not such a complaint would get anywhere. Such a complaint would not get anywhere.
The tribunal may have questions for you.
Justice Yaqub.
Thank you. I gained the impression that although the deceased was 8 years younger than you are, you regarded him more as a friend than a cousin. Is that right?
As I mentioned, when Borhan was growing up, I was mostly in Iraqi Kurdistan. But when I went back to Iran, I was in touch with him. We were like friends, family, I don't know what to call it. We had some similarity in our opinions. We had similar opinions. We had discussions between us, debates between us.
That's very useful. Where were you living at the time that this happened?
I was living in Germany, in Aachen.
Did the fact that you were not in Iran have anything to do with your political beliefs, or you just left for other reasons?
The reason I left Iran was mainly political. And unfortunately, I was in Iraqi Kurdistan 5 years. I lived there, worked there, and after Daesh attacked, I had to seek asylum in Germany. I couldn't go back to Iran. That's why I'm in Germany now.
And were your cousin's beliefs, Borhan's beliefs, as strong politically as yours? Would he have rejected the dictatorship, as I think you did?
100%. I would like to clarify something here. I do not want to make a discrimination among the different provinces of Iran, but Kurdistan, the province of Kurdistan, has always been harassed by the Islamic Republic more than the other places. That's to say, what we have been experiencing from the very beginning, that's to say, from the very beginning of the revolution, Kurdistan has been harassed more than other people. It was always pressured by security forces, and what we have experienced for so long, other places in Iran are experiencing even now, only now. So we have felt this discrimination more, and therefore we have resisted more against this discrimination, and we have tried to fight against the discrimination. And of course, Borhan also grew up in the same community. Of course, if you compare him to me, perhaps he was from a different generation, but he did have the same beliefs, perhaps slightly differently, in a different way. But when I talked to him, I saw that he had the same concerns. He saw the same problems in society. He analyzed them. He suffered from what he saw in society, not only in Kurdistan, but the whole country, the whole of Iran, the whole country is stuck with this dictatorship. And this dictatorship continues to grow roots, to become more stronger, and to pressure the people. The pressures that you have in Iran right now have been increasing for 42 years from the beginning of the revolution. And therefore, you have a society which is on the verge of explosion. There is a new generation. It's a new generation that cannot cope with this system anymore and is trying everything that it can to break it up. And I think that Borhan was a representative of this new generation. I am also a representative of the other generation, and I was pressured by this system in any way that I was. I was also representing the objection of the different generations, and the people are tired of these pressures, and Borhan was one of these people, like many other people in society. He became a victim. Puya Bakhtiari, who became a victim also in Aban, the ones who were shot down in the Ukrainian plane, the ones who became a victim 2 years before that, they were all pressured by the system, and they were persecuted so much that they could not take it anymore. Now, some lost their lives, some could disentangle themselves and flee to Europe or other countries and accept the self-imposed exile, but none of them could take the pressure anymore.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you a slightly more difficult question. Some of us who have lived in difficult and horrible countries know that these countries always have police spies, and we also know that some people are able to hide their beliefs and thoughts to the extent where they are not marked by the police in any way. Yet others, however carefully they behave, the police spies are so good that they get to be known by them, and they get kind of marked out as sort of people to be aware of and people to be to watch carefully. I'm very interested in whether you had any idea about whether Borhan fell in the marked out category. Even in Kyrgyzstan, I'm sure some people are better known to the police than others. What category, if you know, did Borhan fall in?
من فکر نکنم.
I don't think that Borhan fell into any of these categories. He was a university student. He had finished his studies, and he was going through his military service in Kermanshah. And I don't think that he was at an age that he was thinking about these things. He did have concerns whether he was pressured or he was labeled or marked out or whatever. I am not aware of, and I don't even think that his family would know something about this. I never felt that. But as a normal person, as a member of society, his concerns were to do his studies, to advance, and what he had studied, actually, he was not interested in, but he wanted to study, again, sociology, because probably they were more in tune with his concerns, and he wanted to broaden his horizon in that area. He had studied veterinarian studies, and of course his aspiration was to go back to Marivan, to have a practice there, and even to go and for free treat the animals whenever he was free. So these were his aspirations. He was a person who grew up with this kind of aspiration, that's to say, to serve others. That's the concern he had. He couldn't see that other people suffer. And it was this kind of concern that probably took him to the street to protest. But to say he had this kind of political tendency or not, whether he was marked out or not, I don't think so. I had never seen that.
That's fine. That's fine. Finally, I want to ask you some questions on conscription, if you know. It may not be necessary, but I think it might. So conscription is compulsory, right? You have to do it in Iran.
Yes.
And before what age, around what ages do you have to do it? Do you know?
معمولا
Usually, a young person, when he reaches 18 years of age, he will be subject to conscription, as far as I knew when I was in Iran. And unless he has a pretext not to do it, for example, if he's studying or if he's in charge of the family, there are certain areas that would exempt you or to postpone your conscription, that you go through your studies, you finish them, and then you do it. But the 2 years of military service conscription, you have to do it. It is a law that exists. Unless you do it, you cannot have a driver's license, you cannot have a passport, you cannot benefit from what society offers you.
I understand that, because we too used to find excuses not to go to conscription in our country in those days. How many years do you have to go for?
Conscription is 18 months to 2 years. It also could be 16 months. It depends where the location is, what the conditions are. I think these are the time lengths, 16 months, 18 months, 24 months, but the normal is 24 months.
Like South Africa 40 years ago, where there were anti-conscription campaigns, where people stood up and organized against conscription. Do you know whether such a thing existed in Iran at all?
No.
No, not until now. No, no, I have never seen. I have never seen a law that eliminates conscription. No, I've never seen.
No, sorry, not a law. Not a law. People, as part of resistance to the government, quite often start campaigns saying, we will not go.
As far as I know, no. There is no such thing.
Thank you very much for your help.
I don't think it exists.
I have nothing more. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Something else that I wanted to make reference to is that there were other people who were in the city of Marivan, that's my city, and Borhan city, and they were also killed, but they were not so much taken into consideration by the media, because either the families were forced to silence or they were under pressure, whatever. I wanted also to mention them here, although I don't have extended knowledge about them, but as far as I've been able to collect some information about them, and I think that I should be allowed to name them. Am I allowed to name them?
Counsel?
Yes, sir.
Can we name them?
Would you please give the list to the council, not do it publicly?
Okay, man, list
Very well. I will provide the list later on, along with images that I have found either from their bodies beside their graves before they were buried. I will send them so that perhaps they could be added to the case file.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I had one question, if I may. When you spoke about members of the IRGC coming to Burhan's family and offering martyr status to make him a martyr in exchange for an interview, at that time, did they also offer blood money?
Yes. They did. I think they did offer blood money. I don't remember what the amount was. I think it was in the ballpark of 500 million, 2 months, but the family did not accept it. That's to say, they went without any prior warning, and they went a few times to the family, not once. But the Islamic Republic, or to say the security forces, they tried to use the carrot and the stick, as you would say, either to pressure them or to offer them. And where they could not exert pressure and they did not give in, they went and became nicer to them, and they offered them at other times. They dragged them to the Ministry of Intelligence, they threatened them, they harassed them, and even last year, on the anniversary of Burhan, when friends and the relatives wanted to go to his grave to have a memorial, the security forces attacked them, they took their mobiles away from them, they even took the father, and they scattered them. The cemetery of Marivan, if you look at it nowadays, you will see the grave of Burhan and the graves of the others who were killed in Marivan during the protests. They are in a row, and over there they have installed a closed-circuit camera so that they can control everything, whatever comes and goes. Something else I wanted to add is that in Marivan or Sarandaj or some other cities, there are places in the center of each city which belongs to them. That's to say, these are closed buildings, places, and this is a place for them to gather their forces if there are any protests or demonstrations, so that they can shoot people from there. For example, in Marivan is in the tobacco building, and that's the place where they shot people. For example, Daniel Ostovai, he was shot from the rooftop by a sniper, and that's how he died. So in every city, you would have some arrangement like this. If you look at the videos, you will see that in Jawan Road also, from a rooftop of an administrative building, they were shooting people.
Just one final clarification. I know you mentioned that complaints were filed and that they were asked not to pursue them, but were they officially closed, those complaints? And if so, what was the final finding?
مختومه نتیجه نهایی اینه که فعلا
Well, it's still they have not received any. They have not any responses. That's to say that whether they have not said that they closed the case, rejected the case, they have not accepted the complaint at all. They have rejected the complaint. So they have not accepted the issue. So when they have not accepted the issue, how can the case be resolved or closed or dismissed when they come to you and say you have to be silenced, you have to accept blood money? That's to say that they are going to allure them and to tempt them to be silenced, and therefore they cannot say that there is a complaint and they are reviewing it. Everything is in their own hands. So,
thank you for your time, and you have our condolences for your loss.
That's all the questions from the panel. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Witness.
Mr. Witness, thank you very much for testifying. We appreciate it, and we appreciate how difficult it must be. So thank you. We'll take it all into account.
I would like to thank you for my part, and we hope that such a trend continues, so that all the brutal angles of the operations of the Islamic Republic become clear to the world, and they see that this system is not the legitimate system of the people of Iran, so that they review and revise their relationships with this system, and perhaps they can realize how people have suffered for 42 years because of this dictatorial, oppressive system. I hope that this trend continues, and I hope such tribunals are not going to be only for Aban. Hopefully you will have another tribunal for the Ukrainian plain, for the other events. May you live long. Thank you very much for my part, and have a good day.
Thank you.